All right, everyone. We start off today talking about the Epstein files. There's no link in the description on this one. This is basically just a rant on my case. I think that it's time that the Epstein files be released fully unredacted with literally everything there. You might have to do it in batches because there's a lot of files. So if you want the average person to be able to absorb any of that information without having to go through legacy media or independent content creators, supposedly we're all disinfo, then you're going to need to make it a little bit more digestible. What I would encourage the Trump administration to do, compile all the paperwork, create a summary. That's for people that don't have the time to pour through dozens or hundreds of pages of legalese to try to find the good stuff. Supply that summary up ahead to people that can be, trusted to disperse it in its de facto form. And then the full files are released, they're publicly available, etc. And the reason that I now suggest this, because for a long time, what I said, and I mean, this is still true, is that if you were to release the whole files, problem is that anyone that's mentioned in those files, even if they didn't do anything wrong, and this is a lifestyles of the rich and famous sort of thing, those people end up discredited. So brands are broken, banks have their executives upended, military brass resign or are fired, relationships are ruined, celebrities get implicated, because the public is not generally going to take the time to go through hundreds of pages of documents and determine who is mentioned in here because they testified, they gave a witness statement, they were simply there at St. James Island, but we've got no further evidence they actually did anything there other than get wasted and pass out and then go swimming. We don't know the differentiation necessarily between those individuals and the ones that did get hoodwinked by human trafficking. And the Trump administration, to its discredit on this particular issue, has come out and said, well, there's not actually any, blacklist or any, blackmail list or anything like that. That's bullshit. We all know it. Donald Trump needs to release all of this now. He should probably do it unilaterally. He should just say, these files are now declassified. Unredact them, release them to the public. The reason is partially strategic, at least for him, because you still have liberals who don't have anything else to complain about saying, Donald Trump is mentioned in the Epstein logs. Maybe not flights to Little St. James, but he's mentioned in association with the Epstein case. It would be very easy for him to simply say, well, just release it all. I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, I mentioned in there. Yeah, I was friends with Jeffrey Epstein until I caught him perving on an underage employee and banned him from my properties, and so forth. So he's got nothing to lose. I've got a sneaking suspicion, though, that there are Republicans in Congress that are hesitant to release it because they might be implicated a little bit more. Do you really think that there's not at least some possibility that Lindsey Graham was mentioned here, or Mitch McConnell, some of the unipartyist Republicans specifically? The hit piece that we saw the other day was a very cherry-picked release of just 8 pages from the Epstein documents, heavily redacted. And the only thing that we got were 3 names. Elon Musk, Bannon, and then we got Peter Thiel, Steve Bannon and Peter Thiel. These are all Trump allies. Trump needs to get out ahead of this. He should have done this months ago, but he definitely needs to do it now. All right, we know that some high-ranking, figures within, GOP and or Trump circles, Rumble's Peter Thiel, Steve Bannon with his War Room, formerly directly associated with Trump, still a supporter generally. And then, of course, you have Elon Musk, one of the biggest donors to the GOP in the last electoral cycle. They released this for a reason. It's meant as a weapon. If they don't have anything else to talk about, just insinuate that all these people are pedophiles. If you buy a Tesla, you're helping to traffic children on Caribbean islands. That's what they're doing. To get out ahead of it, he should just give them a shot across the bow and say, okay, I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to release the whole thing. I have a feeling, though, that it's the Republicans that are holding him back more than the Democrats. And indeed, you see this all of the time, but especially in this particular instance, there is massive hesitance to actually expedite this process. Don't you think that makes people a little suspicious? Because Donald Trump never explicitly said, no, we're not going to release that or anything. Even Pam Bondi did. and Pam Bondi should be outright fired anyway. It's a combination of uniparty Dems and uniparty Republicans. And those that are privy to the less redacted full version of the Epstein files, certainly they've looked through this, and probably almost all of them have at least one associate that either partied with Epstein at Little St. James or is adjacent to somebody who did. And they've got their inner circle, and that inner circle also has a much further outer circle. These people are all connected by money, by travel, economics in general, diplomacy, military endeavors, all sorts of personal intrigue, and that's why I suspect they're not releasing them. It would collapse the economy. But at this point, I think that you should just let the economy collapse under such circumstances, both for politically pragmatic reasons for the populistic movement, as well as for ethical reasons because the public needs to know the truth. And also because, hey, we take a hit now, we're going to come out shining later on because then we can let the public decide. When the public reads the documents and they look at the names and they see how are they referenced? Did this person meet with Epstein one time back in 1999? Nobody gives a shit. Not if they're just really, really reaching. Did somebody go to Little St. James Island 5 or 6 different times? That may raise red flags. The public should be able to decide for itself if it wants to continue using a bank where maybe the executive went there, 20,000 times, for obvious reasons. Whether they want to support a sports star that has let them down by, partying with this pedophile or something, or whether they say, well, this person is mentioned, but the only context in which they're mentioned is that they were talking badly about Epstein and saying that they avoided him, or, yeah, they met with him once in an office, 20 years ago, and it was literally just about an investment experience or something like that. The public has the right to know. So at this point, for even just self-serving purposes, the Trump administration should release the documents. I'm getting tired of waiting because I was promised that there were folders on Pam Bondi's table. I'm getting a little bit irked about this. Again, I can understand the reason why. It's a much deeper reason than the analysis that most people are giving, and I can guarantee that that is the absolute reason. 100%. Because if you release these names, those people's brands are now damaged. Even again, if they're mentioned in what would generally be conceived of as a positive light, you have to set things up beforehand and wait a little bit longer for that sort of thing to happen. The only other problem is if there's active investigations. If there are active investigations, redact those names. It might be Dershowitz, it might be anyone else under the sun. Redact those in order to protect, the legal system and its ability to potentially prosecute them. You can, unredact it over time if you choose not to prosecute, or if they've been successfully prosecuted, then you release it then. For everyone else, for anyone that's been either A, cleared, they're mentioned in the documents, but it does not indict them of any particular wrongdoing, or B, the person, in some cases, may already be in prison or have other charges or something like that. Those should be unredacted so that the public can know. It's just full disclosure. The Trump administration could really win, I think, with a lot of especially independent voters by simply giving that clarity. You have to be careful about it. It has to be very strategic. But I think that it can be done, and I definitely believe that it should be done. That's about all. Peace out.